dog named Beja from a really despicable shelter in Kansas when I was a teenager, and she was left behind there. She was on death row. She was stranded on death row. And I got her, and she was super antisocial dog. She didn't like very many people. And so 10 years after I got her, and I lived in Portland, where I learned about new cool hippie things, and I thought I would take her to an animal communicator. So an animal communicator is also known as a pet psychic. It's somebody who just vibes with an animal and then tells you what they have to say. I was going to go check one out at the Animal Expo at the convention center. So I took Beja. I put a thing around her neck that said, "Don't pet me," so strangers wouldn't pet her. And we went there, but I was there like too early, so we went and we sat in on a fly ball demonstration, which is like a dog relay race, where dogs are going back and forth. And Beja was on the bleachers, like, yeah, like barking and looking at them and like getting really into it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And we walked around all day and got dog food samples, and she was letting men pet her. She was letting all kinds of people, children were running up, and she was joyful. It was really out of character for her. So we got to the pet psychic seminar, and it was a bunch of chairs set up like this, and this woman, who I'll call Blanche, but I might mistake and call her was standing on stage, and she, she said, are there any volunteers? And of course, I was the first volunteer. I was like, this is great, a free session. And she put my dog up on this table, and my dog was like real happy to see her, letting her pet her. The bandana was being ignored. And she said, well, first I need to tell you, Beja says that she wants a job. And I was like, well, what kind of job does she want? And she said, well, she wants a job like what one of those flyball dogs were doing. She thought that looked really cool. And I was like, oh, eerie. And then she said, and she wants you to know that, or Beja really loves you because you're the first person who ever held her. And I was like, it's true. And, she was my guy. And then I said, do you have a question for Beja? And I was like, well, yeah. I'm about to go live at a farm for rescued factory farm animals for a summer. Can I leave Beja here with my girlfriend? Will you tell Beja to, like, be okay with that? And she conferred with my dog, and she was like, Beja says no. Beja says that's not going to work for her. And, can I step in and say, you're her best friend? I mean, come on, really. She's a small dog. It's a farm, for goodness sakes. Just bring the dog. And I was like, all right, you guys, I guess I will. So I took Beja to the farm with me, and it was fine. And we came back, and Blanche got in touch with me. And she was like, hey, Nicole, I was really moved by you and Beja, and I am really into the idea that you go hang out with animals that have been rescued from something. I want you to learn animal communication so you can talk to those animals and tell their stories. And I was like, okay. How do I do it? And she said, well, you have to come to my seminar at my house in Liss Center, Washington. And I was like, okay. And she's like, it's $1 billion or however much. And I was like, at the time, that's how much it seemed. And I was like, I don't have any money because I'm like young and poor and, I can't do that. And she said, well, I'm going to find some people to sponsor you. And so she got these geriatric vegans to say they would sponsor me because they wanted me to go talk to farm animals and find out their story and tell people. And I was like, great. She said, okay, it's at my house at this farm. Don't be late. It's at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, no problem. So I left Portland at 5 a.m. because I thought, this was before MapQuest or phones or anything, and I was like, I think the center must be by Seattle. I don't know why. If you don't know, the center's right by Portland. So I left my house, and I was like, I'm just going to drive to Seattle, and I'm sure I'll run into it, and I'll just stop around Seattle and find it. And then, it was I was really tired. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. I was falling asleep on the wheel, smoking a cigarette, which I don't do, and pinching myself. And then I get to Seattle, and I haven't seen Liss Center around there. And so I stop at a payphone and look at the yellow pages and see the map on, and I called, and I was like, I guess I'm by Seattle. And she was like, what are you talking about? Liss Center's 5 miles outside of Portland. And I was like, I'm coming back. I don't know. So I showed up, and there's a beautiful farm. It's like a beautiful house and a beautiful farm. And I'm sweaty and hungry and I have BO. And, this middle-aged woman with poofy mom hair answers the door. And there's all these other upper middle class, middle-aged people sitting around, beautiful white carpet. And she's like, oh, take off your shoes. And I was like, ugh, because I had the holy socks. So I was having class trash thrown at myself, or sweaty and gross, young punk, hairy, and holes in my socks. And I was like, hi, I'm here. I'm the sponsored kid. And it was lunchtime, and they're like, do you want a sandwich? We're having ham sandwiches. And I was, in my head, I thought, I'm not an animal communicating wizard yet, but I know that the pig in that ham sandwich was not stoked. And so it's weird to me that all of you guys are paying a bunch of money to find out how to talk to animals, but you're enjoying an animal that way. So I didn't eat anything. I was like, I guess I'll eat like 3 tortilla chips, thank you. And I met the vegans, and they looked a little bit disappointed in me because I was so late. And was like, where's your dog? And I was like, I left her at home. And she's like, you should have brought her. She's the thing that's anchoring you to earth. She's your best friend. You wouldn't have gotten lost if you brought her. And I was like, cool, I didn't know. So then she was like, you guys, I should sage her, right? She's got weird vibes. And they were like, yeah, sure. And so she put me in the center of these 10 people sitting in a circle. I was standing in the center, and she saged me in front of them. And somebody was like, is it just me, or do you see weird things coming off her body? And she was like, yeah, I do. And it was like vibes, my bad energy was coming off my body. And then we were gonna like dance in a circle, and somebody strapped bells to my ankle, and we were dancing in a circle, and then somebody started throwing glitter on me because my vibes were still bad, because I was so upset by everything that was going on. And then I almost started crying when the glitter hit me. I was like, God! And then we had ESP partners, and I kept failing my partner. Everyone else was like, do you see a triangle? Me too. And I was like, I don't know, square. And he's like, no, circle. And I got it wrong. And then I tried to meditate, and I fell asleep meditating like in a real airplane way that you're not supposed to do. And then, it was the end of the day, and people were like, oh my God, I've come to like 13 of these seminars, and I just now can talk to my dog. And I thought like, oh, that's really weird, if you don't have a psychic ability, it seems bad to take money from the person without psychic ability. So I leave, and I kind of stop talking to her, and she emails me, and I don't email her back, and I go through a terrible breakup, and I'm really distraught, and I'm like, oh, the Animal Expo's coming around. And so I bring Beja with me to the Animal Expo, and we go to her booth to say hi. She's petting Beja. Beja's loving it. And she's like, Nicole, why haven't you answered my emails? And I was like, I just have been going through a hard time. And Beja started growling a little bit, and she kept petting her, and she was like, well, I really want you to respond to me because I really, want you to work with animals. And I was like, I think I have to go to like a therapist first. And she said, well, I think the animals could be your therapist. This is how you could work through things. And then Beja started straight up growling and snapping at her. And I was like, be that as it may, I think I need to see a human therapist, but why is my dog growling and snapping at you now, all of a sudden? She was like, well, because you are feeling vulnerable and sad, and she's your protector, and she can tell that I'm encroaching on your boundaries, and so she's protecting you. And so I realized that, I didn't need to go to this thing to communicate with my dog or to communicate with animals. We had this heart connection all along, and that's it. And so I'm glad I rescued her from being left behind.